Node Inspector is a really powerful NPM module that allows us to debug server-side code using the Chrome debug tools. It's really useful to understand how server-side code is working, and we'll be using it to interrogate Meteor on the server. Up on top here, I've got a Meteor application that has some server code running in the server folder. And all it does is provide a startup callback to Meteor startup, and I've put this debugger statement here, debugger, which should tell the debugger to pause on this line, and that way we can debug the server side using Node Inspector. Now, the easiest way to get started with Node Inspector is just to use the one that comes bundled with Meteor automatically. So instead of starting our app like this, we'll provide a flag that says debug port, and then we'll just give it some random port. So I'm going to use 8080. And this will start up the Meteor application in a debugging mode and pause when the application first loads up. So there it's telling us to go to localhost 10302, this line here, and so we'll open up a browser, and that will let us debug our server app. In the browser, when I navigate to the URL that was given to me, it'll be paused in the first line of execution in the Meteor application. So to get to our debug statement, or our debugger statement, I can press the play button, and in a few seconds it should drop me right where we put that debugger line. There we go. And from here I can use the console just like I can in the browser, in the normal browser, and inspect variables and do any other kind of debugging that I'd like. Just like in normal browsing debugging, I can press the play button to just continue execution of the application, or I can step through the code line by line. I can step into a function or out of one, and I can stop all debugging together with this button. So let's go ahead and continue execution by pressing play, and that will resume setting up the server. Now, although this is the easiest way to get server-side debugging, which is just to use the Node Inspector that's bundled with Meteor, the one that's bundled with Meteor is a little bit out of date, and so I prefer to use the latest version by just using Node Inspector directly. So let me show you how to do that. You can install the Node Inspector tools by using the npm command line tool, and we'll say install and use the -g flag that says to install it globally. And then just type node-inspector and press return. Once the installation completes, if you type node inspector -v, it should give you the version of Node Inspector that you're using. So in this case, I'm using version 0.8.3. Next, let's start up the Meteor application and make it debugging ready. What we can do is pass some environment variables directly into Node.js. And so I'll create an environment variable called node options. And whatever we provide in this string here will get passed along as options to the node process. And so the option that I want to pass along is called debug and then -brk. And that'll tell Node to just debug, to pause at the first line of execution. And then we can start up the Meteor app like normal. Now, once this starts up, it'll start up in debugger mode, and it'll tell us the port that the debugger is listing on. But now we need to start Node Inspector itself. So I'll just come down to this third console here and type Node Inspector. Now it tells us the new URL to go to debug, so we'll go ahead and navigate to that localhost 8080 debug port 5858. And there we are, dropped in the first line. Now you might see a few errors in the console about bad versioning, and that should be okay for now. Now once again, that debug -brk option drops us into the first line of execution in Meteor, but if we press play, that'll take us to our next breakpoint, which we set by using the debugger statement directly in our code. It might take a couple seconds. There we go. So Node Inspector is really useful for debugging your own server-side code, but also for learning about how other server-side code works, like in Meteor.